Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
I was about to start then with my mic off. Good evening, edufolk, and welcome to another fantastic rendition of Staffroom 101. I feel like the show is actually infamous at this point, and I certainly think tonight's episode is going to be no exception to that rule. For most of us, we are on the cusp of, or may have even started, our new school year. So it's all kicking off, it's all happening. And with that in mind, I'd just like to remind you of our current sponsor, which is Pearson EdXL's new French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs. So some of you will be starting with that this year, hopefully. And it caters to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. It's rooted in learned language knowledge and it's accessible to all. And if you want to find out more about that, you can go to go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24. Now, I can see that Mr. Tom HB is already in the mix and ready and raring to go this evening. I know Nathan is joining us momentarily, or at least I hope he is. Has he managed to pull himself away from the beach long enough to join us, Tom? Do you know?
I don't know. Very good evening, everybody. It's an absolute delight to be here on Monday, the 4th of September, for our Staffroom 101 Back to School special. And as Lucy has said, I am Tom Hopkins-Burke, and I'm delighted to be with you for the next hour and a half. Now, this show is going to be hopefully published as a podcast, unless I ever say anything too naughty, like Julian Keegan did earlier today. A very good evening as well, and good day to everybody listening on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and of course on the website ttradio.org/listen back. And I just wanted to say, particularly to the people listening back, teachers, you do an effing good job day after day.
Oh, you scared me there,
grinding it out. And sometimes, especially school leaders as well, because school leaders, they get a lot of rubbish and not a lot of praise, and actually school leaders do actually deliver a fantastic job, and they've been trying to keep their staff safe and their students safe, especially in the last few days. So I just want to say to every teacher and every school leader, you do an effing good job, and none of you sit on your backsides. Because we know how hard you are all working at the moment. It's been my first day back today, 194 to go. I am counting down, and first inset day back. Fantastically, no rubbish, just straightforward. Here's the plan for next year. Here's all of the important sort of logistics, safeguarding, freedom of information, GDPR, first aid, whatever, and then just have some time to get your classrooms ready and get your lessons ready for when the kids come back on Wednesday. So, thank you to my senior leadership team for giving us the time and just for cutting out all of the nonsense that I've heard that has happened in some schools. One of my former colleagues had 4 hours on Friday or Thursday on flip learning, so that might have caused them to flip out again, a bit like how Julian Keegan did earlier today. One conspiracy theory I heard was that Julian Keegan deliberately said those things in order to detract attention away from the ongoing rat crisis. I'd be very interested to hear what you think. And before the summer, we did suggest that Julian Keegan could go into Staffroom 101, but we decided the time was not right. So it'll be interesting to see now if the time is right for Julian Keegan to go into Staffroom 101. But it's not about me tonight. It's about you, and it's about your suggestions. And I am part of a three-strong panel of judges. Lucy Newberger has already introduced herself, and the other person, of course, is Nathan Ginn. And tonight, Nathan, is a special treat. I won't play the game where I pretend I can't hear you. So Nathan, over to you.
Can you hear me, Tom?
Yes.
Yes,
Well, I'm
right.
not Tom, but yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I want to explain why I was late into this space, right? So I was late into
You'll have, first of all, Nathan, you will have to pay back the time at the end of the space. So, but carry on.
Right. So the reason I was late is because somebody told me I could join from a computer, right? And that now you can join from a computer into a space, blah, blah, blah. You can join from a computer. I've turned on my computer. I've got my microphone set up. I've got my headphones set up. I can't get my computer to join the space. So I'm restarting I'm doing everything, right? Because I wanted to do this whole big thing, Tom, where I was like at the start of it going, hey, guess what, everyone? You can now join our spaces from a computer. And I can't. I could do it false. I could pretend. But if you can join from a computer, turn on your computer, join from a different account, who cares? Like, join in. If you can join from a computer and call in, then you will. I don't know. Do we have any prizes anymore, Tom?
I've got dozens of mugs in my cupboard ready to give to.
I want
our
proof,
listeners.
though. I want proof, right, that you can join in from a computer. Because I was told you could. I believe people have done it. So unless they were lying to me and they couldn't, and they were actually on a phone.
I should also point out as well, it's something we haven't really said, but we do have a merch page on our website.
Yeah, we do.
We've got hoodies, we've got t-shirts, we've got mugs, we've got all sorts of things. And really encourage you to go out there and buy a hoodie which says "I hate Ofsted" or whatever it says.
I only discovered this the other day that we had the merch page. I don't know how I didn't know this.
That's where I get all my
Nathan's
clothes from. It's where I get all my clothes from. I was wearing it on inset days and things. It's TT Radio match.
I think I just need to start wearing it because there's some great designs on there. I had a look the other day, so I need to top up my teacher wardrobe. I think
you have to represent. That's what I'm saying.
Most definitely,
you've got to represent. Turn up, represent.
So
right, where were we at?
Anyway, I want to say a really good evening to all of the people listening live on. We can't call it Twitter Spaces, so we'll just call it Spaces because I don't want to say X Spaces because it sounds a bit too seedy. So a very good evening to Waleed, to Raz M, to Martin, to David, who's a trainee computer science teacher. If you've started just this year, just this week, then very best of luck, David, for the year ahead as a trainee teacher. We've got Helen, who's a primary music teacher. We've got Callum, who is a subject leader for politics. Very exciting. Another politics subject leader in Spaces. I can't wait. And actually, he's very close to me, and he's just disappeared. We've got Paul, of course, very loyal listener. We've got Pat. We've got Sam Dickinson. We've got Miss Evans, a Staffroom 101 regular, and we have the Edge Foundation as well. A very good evening. So, Nathan, how long have you been back now?
Hang on, no, Tom, just give me 1 second. I'm going to leave the space. I've been back in Inset today.
Today.
It says that I can join from my computer. I'm switching devices.
Okay,
give me 1 second.
We'll go on.
Okay?
Lucy,
seriously, if this is going to be an hour and a half of Nathan trying to do this, I'm going to just boot him from the space altogether.
Ooh, we'd have to get somebody in to replace Nathan. I suggest Miss Evans would probably be a prime candidate.
Oh yeah, we've got plenty of people who could. Oh no, he's
or
back.
Sam, of course, or Paul. But yeah, we've got lots of people. We've got our very loyal listeners as well. I also want to say I've had to sort of had some correspondence with Pearson and Excel over some of our remarks and some of our sort of scripts, and I just want to say we've been absolutely first rate. So big shout out to our sponsors at Pearson and Excel as well. So Lucy, you're in Portugal. First of all, what's the weather like here? Because it's absolutely scorching for UK standards at the moment.
Well, we seem to have done a bit of a direct swap because it's thunderstorms and rain here, which is absolutely mad. I mean, it was absolutely cracking thunder yesterday. Today it has rained non-stop all day. It is kind of passing through, but it's very strange because one is simply not used to such things.
Yes,
I'll stop talking.
It was weird. It was weirdly warm here today, and going into Inset with a pair of jeans was probably not a wise decision.
No.
So it'll be shorts tomorrow, I think. I mean, sorry.
Are you? I suppose are you still on Inset? Are you?
Yeah, tomorrow's Inset. Yeah, tomorrow's Inset as well. Inset
so
day
you can show
2.
some knee without getting into trouble.
Yeah. Well, what's the general rule? Nothing you can see up, down, or through. I think that's the rule. I mean, staff dress codes would be an interesting one for Staffroom 101. Ties for male members of staff would be a good one for Staffroom 101.
I will.
Tom,
Nathan, are you on a computer?
I'm on a computer now, right? Now,
Oh,
believe it or not, and I you know, maybe you're new to Spaces, maybe you haven't used Spaces before. Maybe this is all just some kind of like you think you've stumbled into some kind of chaos, which you have. But
Organised chaos.
I'm 50-50 on that.
Yeah.
I'm on a computer. I am on a computer, like a laptop, not on my phone. So I've managed to do it. Do you know what it was? I restarted the computer, which I feel silly about, but apparently it turns out that does work. I restarted my computer. Now I am talking to you, not on my phone, on a computer, which means I can do other things. I can update my OnlyFans page for Tom Rogers. And
Nathan, can I just say, this is the most excited I have heard you, I think, ever.
Because of the OnlyFans.
No, not because of the OnlyFans, because you're coming to us live from your computer, and I feel that now you're going to. It can really only go downhill from here.
These little things, you know, like amuse us, don't they? And actually, being able to do this on a computer rather than on my phone, like I like it on my phone when I'm listening. Like when I'm being a listener and I'm partaking and I'll have my phone on, maybe doing the washing up. Maybe some of you are doing that as we speak. Maybe you're doing a bit of washing up, bit of cooking, got the phone next to it. Maybe you're doing that. But me, I'm sat here at like a desk and normally I'm kind of talking into my little phone. But now I am like, okay, sad is what it is, isn't it? I've realised. I've tailed off. Yeah, back to things we hate, Tom.
Back to things we
hate. Speaking of things we hate, a big shout out to some of our listeners. Tom Rogers is here, for example.
Crying out
loud. And this is my last day at Teachers Talk Radio, everybody. It was great knowing you all. What was that? Where were we? No, we got more listeners, which is great because we've just waffled on for the last 10 minutes. So Daisy's turned up. A very good evening to Daisy. She's been on recently, so I think she was on Sam's show on Saturday, debut show about mentoring new teachers. So thank you, Daisy, for coming on as a guest, and good to see you here this evening. I was about to say somebody who's just disappeared. We've got Jimmy. I don't know who Jimmy is. One of my old students is called Jimmy from last year. Fortunately, it's not that Jimmy. Who else have we got? We've got Vanessa, MFL teacher. Very good evening as well. And of course, we've got Hannah Wilson, who has just come from her Twilight show on the joys and not so joys of Inset Days. And I should say, of course, speaking of Podbean and speaking of hosting from computers, one of our hosts hosting from computers at 9:00 tonight is Richie Slack on the Late Late Show on Teachers Talk Radio. So after you finish with us tonight, make sure you go and listen to Richie as well. So yeah, Nathan,
Tom, just while we're on Richie Slack, I feel like we need to workshop a catchphrase for him, because he has a name that would suit, you know, like a morning host DJ on local radio, where it's like
you're listening to Slack FM,
taking in the slack with Richie Slack or something like that. You know, I feel like we need a jingle.
I think that's a bit rich, Nathan.
You know, no more slack with Richie Slack. Something like that. I feel like we need those. If there are any English teachers in who want to workshop some jingles for our hosts, are they jingles? Taglines? You know, like you know, I can't think of one. All the Rogering with Tom Rogers. I don't know.
Please don't say that again. Ever. I mean,
right.
Given we are talking about swear words,
can we move on? Because
professionalism.
15 minits was going to be about Gillian Keegan. We're 13 minutes in. We've got 2 minutes left to talk about Gillian Keegan.
I heard you say you thought some people were saying she did it on purpose to distract from it. If she did, it was the worst idea ever, because it hasn't distracted. Like, it got mentioned once at my school today, and admittedly we're not in England, but it got mentioned once when someone asked our site manager if we had any of that concrete in the building. But I think it did not work. I'm just going to distract by pouring more petrol on the fire. That's the worst idea ever. So if that was her plan, actually, maybe she is so inept, they are so bad at their jobs that it was her plan, and she executed it so badly that was the plan to cause a catastrophic mess. Maybe that was the plan. But yeah, if it was supposed to be a distraction, it failed massively.
Nick Gibb was on LBC today, basically saying that the people who Julian Keegan accused of sitting on their backsides and basically not helping were a small minority of school managers who hadn't submitted their questionnaires on time.
Oh, whoop-de-doo. Like, honestly, like, how long, like, they should have, this information should be somewhere anyway. They could have got to local authorities, they could, or academy chains. The fact, it worries me that they've had to send questionnaires out on a Sunday to school managers, right? Possibly caretakers, possibly head teachers, and then blaming them for, the first day of school, you didn't get back to us quick enough. Their toilets might have flooded. They might have had a bunch of staff with COVID. A staff member at one of my very valuable members of staff, broke her foot. She's going to be off for 4 weeks. Sometimes there's stuff that happens that means you can't return a questionnaire immediately. The reason that they're stressed about it is because they're panicking. So they want it done really quickly. So they're stressed and they're putting that stress onto other people. It's ridiculous.
Julian Keegan also said that there are many other reasons why a school might collapse, not just RAC.
Sorry, I'm going to have to mute myself.
And I mean, what else? Yeah.
Sorry, can I just come back to that, Tom?
Yeah, come on, Nathan.
That's an actual quote from the education secretary
on ITV today.
That she said there are other reasons a school
many
might
other
fall
reasons
down.
why a school might collapse.
Many.
For example, there might be a leak. Her words.
But the school shouldn't be. Oh my god, I can't.
I mean,
okay.
Can we? At what point do we put this woman out of her misery? I don't mean kill her, just to caveat that. But at what point do we just go, nah, love, just stop talking, just no.
So this is a question then. I want to ask Nathan, I want to ask Lucy. Do we think this time next week, on Monday the 11th, Julian Keegan will still be in post?
I think yes. I think she's belligerent enough to. I don't think she's going to be got rid of, but they are kind of doing a sort of shuffle-a-roo, aren't they? So
no.
Well, they've done the mini reshuffle. That's all over. Labour have done a slightly bigger reshuffle today. Bridget Phillipson's still at Shadow Education Secretary.
Yeah, isn't Angela
we might get some new schools.
Shadow Levelling Up Secretary. What a title. I mean, Levelling Up Secretary as well is a silly title. But anyway, that's besides the point. Yes, I do think she'll still be in post because I think she's belligerent enough to be there. I don't think she's going to step down because she... what she demonstrated today, if you look at her body language and just look at the way she's speaking when you see that bit of footage, it just screams, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but I don't think she's going anywhere, sadly.
Too proud.
Yes, that's it. She will never swallow her pride.
Will she still be here on Monday next week?
I think she has caught herself in one of these catch-22s where she has a decision to make, which is she either admits that she blames like Rishi Sunak or someone, and she does that, which will get her moved out, or she looks inept, which then they will have to move her out anyway. So I think she either has to fall on her own sword or she has to blame someone and then be cut down. I think, she doesn't stand much chance for me.
Well, you are all here listening tonight, not to hear us about Julian Keegan, but you're here to listen to us talk about items going into Staffroom 101. Now, Nathan, for first-time listeners, and we do have some first-time listeners tonight, could you explain what Staffroom 101 is and why we haven't been sued by the BBC yet?
Well, the suing bit surprises me because I really thought we'd get this would be copyrighted off air in no time. But I guess Room 101 is from 1984, the year that we apparently are currently living in. Things that you don't like are in Room 101. And then there was also a TV show which we don't mention because that's the one that we're a bit sketchier on whether this is similar or not, because it's education, it's a staff room. So Staffroom 101 works very similarly. We get things suggested into us, or we have suggestions. You can call in and suggest something for us to debate. Normally me and Tom don't agree, and this is why we are here together at this time, because in effect he drives me up the wall with some of
It's
his
all for
opinions.
show. We actually agree on everything.
And
it's the most useful bromance, really, that the world has ever seen.
And then we vote. And then it's up to the people listening. Sometimes there's one person gets to decide, but we get rid of that thing. And some of the things we've got rid of before, we have got rid of education secretaries at some points. We have got rid of certain colours of pens. We have got rid of, petty annoyances.
Learning styles.
Yeah, and the whole range. They can be petty annoyances, which is generally my preferred
Didn't we
thing.
get rid of football at break times? I think that was the most controversial one yet.
Yeah, it took 3 attempts, I think, to get rid of football at break time.
I think it's Lucy. Were you involved in that?
I think quite possibly at some point. Can I also just say that Miss T is very patiently waiting in the back. I don't know which bit she wants to comment on, but
yes, Miss T.
Yeah.
Hello.
Sorry, I was just going to say the word I think Lucy was looking for before about Gillian Keegan in that interview was contempt. Her face.
That's it.
Her face was pure contempt when she was laughing and joking, and that's all I was going to say. Apologies.
No,
that's all right. You feel free to hang
it.
about it as well, because we're about to suggest our first item for Staffroom 101. Now, this suggestion actually came from Lucy, so Lucy will make the initial case for it going to Staffroom 101, and it is, Lucy, in your words, I think, back to school stress. Tell us more.
Well, I mean, I think that there's always sort of a run up to this, be it a number of inset days, be it the tasks that you have to do, be it kind of just worrying about the year ahead. And my school's gone through a rough couple of years with leadership, with management, with all kinds of things like that. And we've actually got a new head in who I'd quite like to shout out in a similar vein to you, Tom, who's actually been wonderful, really actually eased us in beautifully and actually really alleviated a lot of the back to school stress. But for me, it's things like backing boards, it's all the little admin tasks, and I've still got a list as long as my arm that I've got to do tomorrow, and it's all that stuff because we've got open house tomorrow afternoon. Things like that where you've got to kind of, eyes and teeth with these parents, be like, yes, everything's going to be marvelous and wonderful. And never mind all the nonsense that I've just shoved in my cupboard and shut the door. Because we were told today that all our rubbish bins were full, that we actually do have to put rubbish in the cupboard. Now, those were the words of our head teacher this afternoon. So that's quite concerning. But yes, I just think that it's very easy to sort of sit here and say, oh, don't be stressed, everything will be fine. But I want stress to go into Staffroom 101 because I want people to feel that they can only do so much, that you are more ready than you think you are, whether you are at the beginning, whether you are a seasoned pro, and there will be things that you won't have done. Your book labels may not be perfect. Your backing paper may not be 100% wrinkle free. Mine definitely isn't. And it's all these things that you end up worrying about, but actually in the grand scheme of things, once you step foot through that door and once you kind of start talking, once you've got that class in front of you, you know what you're doing. You don't need to stress. So I want it binned, please.
You see, I don't quite understand this because, yes, we could put back to work stress into Staffroom 101, and I don't think anybody would be opposed to that because anything to make our jobs easier, throwing away stress is great. But are we actually throwing away the stress, or are we throwing away the things that are causing the stress?
Probably the latter. So, yeah, I think the things causing the stress, or at least finding a way to make it less, make these things less stressful, or maybe kind of reducing the number of rubbishy tasks that we have to do before the start of term.
So, I mean, this then is quite nicely combines, I suppose, Lucy, with our second entry for Staffroom 101, which is 4 days of training on insects.
Yes, I had 7 hours of paediatric first aid on Friday, which was quite useful. But things I learned, because they're funny, sort of, I suppose it differs wherever you are. But in Portugal, here's a fun fact for you. If you suspect a poisoning of a child, you can't phone 112, which is the Universal European Emergency Line. You have to phone the equivalent of poison control and ask them for help because 112 will not help you, which I'm slightly concerned about. But yeah, so I've had useful inset so far. And actually, when I was in Germany recently, they were treating the Research Ed conference as their inset and their CPD. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, I think people can get it right, but they can also get it very, very wrong.
So I'm on mute. Hannah talked earlier today about some of the best and worsts of insect. And I've said, I found today's inset really useful, even though it was more sort of logistics and the sort of things we had to do, like first aid and safeguarding, etc. But from my perspective, and I hope to make something which is quotable to be tweeted out, any insect day which involves sugar paper is a waste of time.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree.
Any insect day which you see, I don't mind somebody standing at the front and telling us what we need to know.
As long as it's not death by PowerPoint, though.
No, death by people who are engaging and captivating and aren't just reading off slides.
So
but
do you think
sometimes you just need to be told something?
Yeah, there's some stuff that is deeply dull. Like you go through your safeguarding chat every year, you go through your health and safety. That's just necessary stuff. What about external speakers, Tom?
No, I would put external speakers at insets into Staffroom 101, and I would throw away the key.
All of them?
Yes, any if a school invests in its staff properly, you have the talent in-house to be able to deliver your professional development sessions, as far as I'm concerned. And the problem with external speakers, and I'm going to think of somebody who's a very good external speaker, Adam Boxer, and he says when he gets lots of requests from people to go into schools, and he's told, could you do a session on retrieval practice? Could you do a session on ratio? Could you do a session on mini whiteboards or something like that? But he says, as an external speaker, he doesn't understand the context of the school. He doesn't understand where they've gone, and it's very difficult to do that. So having staff, whether they're senior leaders or middle leaders or TLR holders or experts in a particular thing from within a school who understand the context of a school, who understand the journey the school has gone on in terms of its sort of pedagogical innovations, who understands sort of that who understands the school and isn't simply coming in with a off the shelf death by PowerPoint, or even if it's not death by PowerPoint, forced fun or something like that. It just doesn't work. I remember a couple of years ago, I sat through a series of sessions delivered by external speakers, and it just felt as if they weren't tailored to the needs of the school, the needs of the staff, the needs of those children in the particular school, because it was the same session they were delivering to all of these other places. So external speakers at insets can go to Staffroom 101, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I appreciate that people will have different views on that, and I'd be more than happy to hear them.
Is that me, Tom?
Yeah, go on, Nathan.
This
is normally the bit where you disagree, and Daisy would as well.
There is some slight things I disagree with. There is too much stress in teaching, and I don't want this to turn into a therapy session, but I had a terrible night's sleep last night. I've probably had a terrible night's sleep this whole week, but that's like slightly too much. That's probably my own issues I need to deal with. I'm not saying that's my school's fault, but there is slightly too much. But also, I do need a little bit of maybe stress isn't wrong. I need a little bit of impetus, a little spark put in me back after the holidays. I do need a little bit of get up and go, maybe a little bit more than coffee. So I do need like a little spark kind of lit underneath me to get me going again. And this leads me on to your point there, Tom, about these external speakers. Is, I would question. Right, people do deliver stuff, and when we talk about insets and things, and maybe this is a question we can tweet out: is how many of you in your insets today, or yesterday, whenever you had them this week, when you were leading sessions, running sessions, when you were teaching, how many of you saw a do it now task, saw an exit ticket, saw someone on pastor's perch or whatever we call it, saw any of those things that are written in your school improvement plan as your quality first teaching and learning strategies? How many of you saw them, or were you in a big hall with one person talking at the front, just delivering? And there is a gap there. People, That's why I hate a lot of my time at university. I don't like lectures. We kind of move past that as maybe a good way of teaching and learning. I know it's adults and it's different or whatever you say, but if that is what you are saying, if you've gone into, and I will paint a picture for you, Tom, there will be people in this country who have gone into a big hall where someone at the front has put up a list of non-negotiable quality first teaching strategies, right? Where they have all of these things that we have to do to make sure people learn. And they have delivered that in a way that is completely at odds with what they are saying. And that frustrates me, right?
Yeah, this is exactly what I was about to say. Why is it teachers and people in education are so bad at delivering CPD? Like, if you went into a lesson observation and saw it, it wouldn't get rated highly.
Yeah, exactly. This Tom, you know, when you talk about our external speakers coming in as well, it's what part of the journey for me? You know, where is that in the journey? Is it the wow factor at the start? Is it something to get discussion going? All of those things I can agree with it of. If it's to teach a lesson, then I would argue it doesn't matter if it's an external speaker or someone at your school. If it's a lecture, you're not living up to the thing. You're not practicing what you preach.
Yeah, I mean, the best CPD I've been in is when the staff have had many whiteboards and it's been interactive, etc., etc., etc. I still don't think that external speakers
Hold
understand.
on, HB, can I pause you for a
Go
second?
on.
Do you mean to say that in a CPD session you have been asked to utilise a mini whiteboard, as in write your answer and hold aloft?
That is correct. A Monday.
Wow. Okay, sorry. Just thought I'd clarify.
Oh, it's useful. It keeps you
Wait,
Lucy,
Lucy,
focused. It's accountability. It stops people dozing off.
Do you disagree with that, Lucy? Then, as a thing.
I don't know how I feel about that one. I suppose if it's good enough to use with your kids in class, is it good enough to use for teachers? But then, I don't know. Would I feel like I'm being treated like a child? I think it would very much depend on the context of that CPD. What was the context, Tom? Sorry.
It was a session on maximising ratio in the classroom. Therefore,
Okay.
mini whiteboards, participation ratio.
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
meta CPD. Love it.
Okay, fair enough. I'll let you have that one.
But no, I don't like. I'm not sure about external speakers. They don't understand the school, and some external speakers will go into different schools with different contexts and different kids and deliver the same session. And and the senior leadership team write the school improvement plan. They know where it is. They have, they can have the training and the resources and the delegation in order to, achieve those things that they want to set out to do. And, if they are essentially saying, look, we're not quite sure, here's an external speaker, they're going to do it instead, it reduces confidence in that leadership team as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so my issue there, Tom, when you described it, what you described to me is a person delivering the same lesson irrespective of the students in front of them, right? And so I would be saying the same thing like Miss T said about whether, if that was a lesson that I saw and I went in and they were delivering the same lesson to, their top set as their bottom set as their year 11s to their year 7s, then I'd be saying the same thing. This isn't fit for purpose, but my issue isn't that they're an external. My issue is that it's not tailored to the needs of the people in front of them. Does that make sense?
But the Venn diagram between external speakers and understanding the needs of people in front of them is a circle.
I don't know. See, I've heard some good, maybe this is not like where we get between speakers and advisors and all these different roles that you can have within education. But I have known them, and I see people who come in and they talk about the fact that they'll come beforehand, they'll do a little working session, find out what the school needs, and then they'll deliver something, and then they'll come back after. And I've seen that at schools where I've worked, where someone's come and done more than a one-off. Does that make sense?
How often do you think that actually happens?
I don't know. I thankfully I only do a couple of insets a year, but maybe we could ask that. What are people seeing out in the listeners here? Is there anyone here who has had really quality experience with an external coming in to deliver CPD? That's my question.
Has anybody been an external speaker delivering CPD? In which case, I do profusely apologise for insulting you.
Throw some hands up. Throw some hands up.
Lucy, go on.
Well, okay, and I'm not actually insulted, Tom, because I think in the way that you're speaking about it, yes, I think it has the potential to be rubbish. But this little adventure that I went on in Germany, the way it had kind of been organised is that, or the way this particular event worked was that you had 4 sessions throughout the day, and within those 4 sessions you could choose what you went to. So there were all kinds of different things on offer, of which one of those lectures, if you want to call it that, although I tried not to make it too much of a lecture, Nathan, was mine. And so it had been designed to be their inset and their CPD, so the staff could kind of, as much as they had to be in and they had to go, it was kind of, they sort of had a bit of their own autonomy, and that they were able to kind of pick what they did. Now, of course, this was in a setting where they could pull off something like this, and the average school is not going to really be able to pull off something like that unless they kind of club together with a particular organizer or can do it in a certain way. So I think in that respect, yes, it can work if you've got options like that, and you can kind of pick and choose what you go to. But if you're just getting one particular person in to wax lyrical about a particular thing without any kind of knowledge of the school or the environment, then that probably is a little bit problematic.
Now,
That's my 2 cents.
Now, Lucy mentioned Germany, so it's a great opportunity for me to remind you that Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs caters to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills through inclusive and relatable content. The new Pearson MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital, I'm not sure if you can hear the size in the background, that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. So go and find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL. Daisy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think that one of the biggest problems with Inset is just like a bit of a lack of creativity. Like, why every year have I got to sit through half an hour of assessment for learning, think, pair, share, mini whiteboards? Like, why are we doing? I think that's what makes it like so tedious. And it's like you said before, like with a lesson observation, like it would be marked so poorly because it just lacks any sort of creativity. It lacks any sort of engagement. It's just, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, group work is my literal idea of hell, and I would rather sit on nails than use sugar paper, mini whiteboards, work.
I was about to ask, are you suggesting we bring out the sugar paper for the
my God, no. But I would like to learn. I'd like to stop being told the same thing every year. Don't get me wrong, safeguarding, first aid, health and safety, but we get it, fine, no problem. But when it comes to like a little bit of CPD and like internal or external, it's always just seems to be the same thing getting rolled out with a new like name, but it is just the same. Like today, like I literally sat through 45 minutes today of assessment for learning. What are the pros and cons of mini whiteboards? What are the pros and cons of cold calling? Or I can I opt out? I should be able to opt out, right? Like that should go into room 101. That is staff room 101, because that is just, it's a waste of time. And I think that's why it's so tedious, is because I don't feel like and imagine if the students felt like that they didn't feel like they were learning anything. It'd just be grim. Especially when, linking to Lucy's thing, in the back of your head, you've got a to-do list as long as your arm of little stuff that you need to do. And like, oh, I haven't done this and I haven't finished that and I've got to finish this. And I'm sitting here listening to like just being droned at in a hall for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. It's very easy to zone out when you feel as if what's being delivered you either know a lot about, or you've heard it before, or whatever it might be. It might just be that it's the school's priority for the year and it's the start of the year and they just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. It might be because, you know, everybody listening tonight, whether you're live or on demand, you know, you're taking your development in your own hands by listening to Teachers Talk Radio, and there will be colleagues at every school, you know, that people are here, you know, who won't do that and might not have the same sort of knowledge on these strategies. It might be that there are ECTs. Now, what's the solution to that? You tailor the CPD to those who need it. If you've got new members of staff or ECTs, you deliver those in twilight sessions. Lucy.
I was just going to say, I've just seen some breaking news that apparently Gillian Keegan is defending going on holiday in the middle of this whole, well, everything that's going on at the moment, the concrete, the her oopsie daisy today, all the rest of it. So I just thought that was
Sorry,
quite.
Now,
Lucy, is she
Lucy,
going
I
on?
am
She's going on holiday.
I think
so
I just need to double check
angry
that. Hold
because
on a
I was
minute.
waiting for you to say you just had some breaking news that Gillian Keegan's resigned, and the fact
No!
that those were not the words that came out of your mouth made me incredibly disappointed, because we'd have been
I'm so
live
sorry.
and the show had been derailed for the next 50 minutes because that's all we'd be able to talk about.
I'm already like derailed, Tom, because like, this is our education secretary who's booked a holiday in the first week of term.
Oh no, hang on. Defence going on holiday despite concrete panel failing emerging last month. So yeah, so sorry.
Okay.
Slight change of yeah. So she was on holiday in Spain from the 25th of August to the 31st of August, and she already knew about several cases regarding this whole concrete situation in schools that was emerging, and
Yes.
yet.
Well,
she went on holiday. She went on holiday knowing the storm was coming, and even 10 days before it happened, you know, when head teachers still didn't really know.
Yeah.
Went on holiday and is able to defend that. Then gets caught on ITV being nothing like, if it wasn't so serious, it would be laughable, but it is actually ridiculous. Surely Rishi has got to at this point just be like, right, we need to put her in a bin.
Well, we have a quote from a whistleblower who has said, and Gillian Keegan reminds in February, 2 months after risk level was raised to high, we just need to keep the lid on this for 2 years and then it's someone else's problem.
Lol.
Wow.
Lol.
I mean, it is passing for buck, isn't
she's
it?
apologised for her.
Imagine one of those schools had come. Imagine one of those schools had come down.
Yeah. And she described her language use as choice language. And now HB and I were having a laugh about this earlier. And yes, we decided that her choice of adjectives was no good and that she needs to revise her use of complex sentences. And
I mean,
certainly...
she's not getting greater depth, even if you're in a school which fudges up the numbers on the writing. You know, no. she's definitely working towards.
Right. Sorry, deviating massively. Should we decide on this first thing whether we are binning or not?
Yes, so first of all, again, we've gone off script, so what are we actually proposing we put in?
So I think it was kind of a tale of two halves here, wasn't it? It was the things that contribute to preterm stress, but also the external CPD, the external speakers for CPD. So there's two things there, really.
So given people have talked about their positive experiences of external speakers for CPD, I'm happy that this year it can remain outside of Staffroom 101, unless anybody really violently wants it to go in.
I mean, we can. Are we going to have a vote, or are we going to just let that one go?
We should remind people that there are little emojis here that you can, show your support, your disapproval, your hundreds, which agreement that is, isn't it? Your clapping. So
your hearts for Nathan.
Hearts. Yep.
That's just Shaniqua. Anyway. So what are we saying about? So first of all, first one was the things that lead to back to school stress.
Okay.
Yes.
How are we voting on that one?
Yes.
So that could go into yes to start. Yeah, thumbs up for it goes into Staffroom 1. Yes.
Preterm stress. Yeah.
Out.
Preterm stress.
So yes for going in the bin. No for not. So thumbs down for no. Thumbs up for yes. So everybody gets
forced participation. The worst part of Inset Days.
Yeah.
Forced fun. Gotta love some forced fun. So
everybody.
So Darren is voting yes for Staffroom 101. Mark is just laughing at us. Hello, Cratchley. Lovely to have you in as always. Anyone
Catherine
else?
Was yes. Mark was yes. I think it's gone in.
Okay, fine. Right.
And Hannah as well. Second thing was whole days of training on inset. So is that going in?
Whole days of training. Oh gosh, yes, that's getting a
So
yes
basically,
from
no
me.
time to sort yourself out.
Give them some time. Do you know my issue with this, Tom? It shows absolute no trust whatsoever in your staff. If you think that giving your staff any amount of time to do what they work on their own, if you think you have to fill every minute of someone's day, then you have absolutely no trust, because I can guarantee the teachers will go back to their classroom and they will work and they will be putting in effort to make things as best as they possibly can for the students. Now, if you believe that if you don't have every session blocked up for that day, if you don't have them in the hall from 8:30 and then signing out at 3:00, then you don't trust your staff. It is absolutely no one can argue any differently. If you are filling people's days with stuff, it's because you don't trust them to fill their own. And you can quote me on that, Lucy. Tweet that out. If you're filling people's days, it's because you don't trust them to fill their own. I think that's what I said, and that's appalling. I think give people time.
I think it's going in then. Whole days of training on inset, jam-packed insets, no personal prep time. Yeah, it's gone in.
Lovely.
Number 3 on the list. Are we ready for this one? Actually, I'm going to move it about. I want to start with something which might be a little bit controversial, but it might not be. Let's see. Let's test the temperature of the room. I want to put into Staffroom 101. Ready? Do we have a drum roll?
No.
Don't drum roll.
No.
Apparently, hold down to record a custom set. No. Drum roll. Blah blah blah.
I'm multitasking. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We don't have a drum roll. Knowledge organisers. I would like to put knowledge organisers into Staffroom 101.
Okay, we should throw this out there. Is there anyone here who is like loves a knowledge organizer? I'm going to look at the pictures of people and we will go through and we will judge Tom. Okay, it's just 50-50, and I go through as we go through. Who have we got here?
Tom Rogers.
So Tom Rogers, I bet
does not like a
does he not?
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'd have said loves it. Cratchley hates it. Just strikes me. He off the cuff. He
also,
hates
it.
it.
English teacher. English teachers don't like knowledge organisers.
Miss Evans, I think, probably likes a knowledge organizer.
I don't think Miss Evans has got a particularly strong opinion that would probably go against him.
I think he would like it. Shall I keep going? I think you can judge. Is it subject based? Do you think it's subject based?
I think a lot of it is subject based. I think for subjects like English, knowledge organisers are not particularly useful. I think sometimes in history they can be useful, but can sometimes just be a way of actually blocking out the key historical thinking actually needs to take place, especially at secondary. Maths, I have no idea. And if you are a maths teacher, I'd love to hear from you about whether you find knowledge organisers useful. Science as well. I think they might be quite useful in science.
I think science.
MFL, vocab French to English or Spanish to English or whatever. As a knowledge organiser, that's all I'll be putting in an MFL knowledge organiser. Geography, I think they might be quite useful. But again, come and call in and prove me wrong. It's that bottom left bottom. And talking about calling in, we have Mark Cratchley, who is an English teacher, who's going to tell us based on his picture alone, Mark is going to tell us why he doesn't like knowledge organisers.
I hate to contradict and surprise, but I disagree actually. So
go on then. The floor is yours.
It depends on how you're using them. So if you're just giving the knowledge organisers pre-completed, they're all there ready with quotes and with extracts and all these ideas on there, then I don't know that that's very useful. But what I try to do is get the classes to build their own knowledge organisers as we go through, and we kind of accumulate. And it's a very collaborative process. So finding the best quotations from the texts, looking at critical analysis, looking at context, all those kinds of things, they develop it and they build it themselves. I mean, they're really good then for revision exercises and for practicing for assessments as well.
Now, Mark, I want to ask you something. Are you familiar with the concept of a working wall?
Yes, yeah.
So is this not just a tiny working wool?
I guess so. Yeah. We don't really use working wools or I don't tend to use them in secondary as much though. So there was certainly I used them in primary, but not so much in secondary. So.
Yeah. That's the only thing I recognised that from. When you were describing it, I was like, that sounds like a primary school, like what we would call a working wool, where as you're going through a topic or as you're going through something, you pull out pieces, you put it up there and save it, and you kind of co-create. And that's maybe not what I think of as a knowledge organizer. I think of a knowledge organizer as being like a central resource thing that has been someone spent hours making, maybe.
Yeah.
And is like set in stone, probably printed in the back of the students' planners.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know,
Yeah,
like
no, I get
that,
it. Yeah, absolutely. I think
I
the
don't know.
schools that I've worked in secondary schools, at least anyway, that I've only ever seen one or two, and what we tend to do is we blank out a lot of the parts and get the students then to fill them in, and we guide them then to what we think are what we would suggest are the best quotations and that kind of thing. But it's a very much more of a collaborative process, and instead of saying, right, here you go, this is what you need to learn, go and do that. And there's no process, there's no cognitive process, there's no solid, decent learning in that process at all, I don't think. So the collaborative approach is much more, like you said, it's like a condensed working wool, but that's the one that works best.
See, HB, I'm on the side of a Cratchley working knowledge organizer. I'm a Cratchley organizer. I'm on the side of HB.
I should patent that.
Yeah.
Oh, so basically, if they're created by the students as you go through a unit, they're fine. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think the idea of printing them all out together, saying these are your half-term one knowledge organisers for, all of your subjects. Your homework is to basically learn off by rote what's on the knowledge organisers. I think that's problematic, and I've seen knowledge organisers used so poorly, and actually they can be quite thin on the ground because people try to make them look fancy, try to make them look pretty, and actually forgets what the core purpose of a knowledge organiser is, which is that it is the core knowledge that students require in order to make sense of that particular unit.
Yeah. Also, it can be they are useful. Those pre-printed ones, those pre-organised ones, they are useful for students with high absenteeism, or perhaps for students who might struggle a little bit as well. So if you're doing sort of more like interventions, for example, if you've got one of those there, it's there ready for the kids to see and to work on, and you can have a discussion with the kids about it, with the students about it that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
See, the thing that I've always struggled with, HB, here, is at what point, right? Because what's the longest knowledge organizer you've seen? Like how many pages? How many pages?
I've never seen a knowledge organizer which isn't on one page. However, I have seen font sizes decrease.
Okay, so I've seen them where they go maybe to 3 pages, and I'm talking about a unit, right?
No.
So maybe like 3 pages for a unit of work. Okay. And then if you were to put together all those units of work, say it's science, for instance, over a year, you've pretty much got a textbook anyway. And so I don't know, like, when does a page from a textbook become a knowledge organizer? When does a knowledge organizer, in that sense, become just part of a larger textbook that you photocopied out?
Yeah, no. At what point does a knowledge organizer become actually... But think about a knowledge organised document. It should be compact. It should be organised into certain sections. The best organisers I've seen have had maybe keywords, have had probably that sort of graphic organiser elements to it. So using sort of different methods of organising ideas according to, whether it's sort of a hierarchy diagram or whether it's sort of, your fishbone, whatever it is, where you have sort of, and that's the way I see it in like English, for example, in lit. If you're teaching a novel and you have sort of a diagram which goes through the plot of a particular novel or a plot of a particular chapter or sort of character development. Now that's me speaking as a history teacher who's never taught an English lesson in my life and is therefore probably talking out of my backside. At least I'm not sat on it, like Julian Keegan claims we all are. Sorry to bag Natrum again. Mark, you're an English teacher. Is what I'm saying at all applicable to your subject?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's and there, like you said, there are different ways of doing it, different styles, and you've got to kind of go for different different approaches that work better for different students as well. So I try and kind of mix it up a bit. So, sometimes I might do like a comic strip. So it's similar to the kind of thing that you might see in the back of the CGP books. They have these kind of quirky little comic strips where I get the students to make their own with the quotations, the key scenes, that kind of thing, for example. Or do like like you say, a character arc, or do something where there's like a target as well. So you've got a quotation in the middle, or a theme in the middle, or a character in the middle, and then you work out a bit like what do they call it? Explode the text, that kind of thing. So something that is going to be, again, like I said, using a mixture of things. If you just come up with a standard template and use the same thing for every text every time, it very quickly becomes very dull and repetitive for the teachers as well as the students.
So I have a question here, Tom, right? Okay, and Mark, maybe Lucy as well. Is when was the most recent time, right, that we heard of someone, or maybe you saw someone sharing on Twitter, whatever, or X, then a knowledge organizer? Because I think of it very much now as a pre-COVID thing. Maybe everyone just did them all over COVID, and once they're done, and they've become static. But those ones that I'm talking about there, where they're essentially stored, printed out the same for everyone, those knowledge organizers, either they have died a natural death, or everyone's written them and is not changing them. I wonder if anyone on their inset today had time, or this week has had time to relook at their knowledge organizers. Was that one of the tasks anyone has done? And if not, why not? Is it because we've fixed them in time, or we've forgotten about them and we've moved on to the next edu fad, maybe making tube station maps out of our curriculum maps again?
I think knowledge organisers are probably on their way out. I think they've certainly peaked and are on the way down. I don't think they've died a death. I think, but as people will say, it's one of those classic quotes. I can never remember who it is. It's either Christine Council or Mary Myatt. Curriculum is never finished. It's an ever-evolving, ever-changing process. I know as a history teacher looking at our Key Stage 3 this year, there are elements of it which is different to Key Stage 3 last year, and therefore you will need to adapt knowledge organisers or make one from scratch in some cases. So I'm not sure that this idea that we've made them and therefore we don't need to change them, I'm not sure that's entirely true in all cases. I think it's just that it is a bit of a fad, and it peaked around 2019, 2020, and they're now just on their way out to sort of, we've got other things, other sort of, what's the word we're looking for? Low effort, high impact strategies, like, whatever they might be, scaffolding, modeling, etc. And actually, knowledge organisers aren't having that sort of impact, but other strategies are. So attentions have sort of shifted. That's my view of it. So I don't think it's this idea that we've made them and we're happy. It's just that we're looking at other things now, and that's one of the big problems of education. It's this idea that we have to move on all of the time, and we don't actually always give enough time for strategies to actually be fully embedded in our schools. Lucy, you seem to be reacting to that one. Would you, for those of you who can't see Lucy because you're listening back, Lucy, just explain your thoughts on that and why you seem so excited.
Well, no, because I'm just agreeing with you about how these things, the number of things that come and go. I mean, I've only been teaching, this is my 8th year, and I've already seen, I can't even remember. I was trying to sort of think about what's come and gone in that time, but it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. I have never used a knowledge organizer, or at least I've never used them with students. I am a primary teacher. The only time I've ever used them is for me, actually, just to kind of have a sort of overview and kind of think about things I need to include, literally just as a very kind of these are the kind of the pre-made ones that exist for primary subjects, just to kind of give me a rough idea sort of what to include and maybe what I need to cover. But I've certainly never ever handed one to a primary pupil for them to do what, stick it in the front of the sort of topic or unit that we're doing, to never to be looked at again. Nah.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? When you look at beautiful books and you give them all the, glossaries as well. If you're going to give a child something, you've got to make sure they actually use it.
Particularly at primary, it's
particularly at primary, it might make a very useful missile for a civil war which breaks out within the class.
Okay, Tom. Right, going back to insets. Did anyone get given a teaching and learning knowledge organizer?
No,
a
I have never
No.
been given a teaching and learning knowledge organizer. And
a school improvement plan knowledge organizer, or has everyone just been handing out, here are all the slides, I've emailed everyone the PowerPoint? Or, this is where we have this disconnect that I'm talking about between what we do for children, what we do for staff, what is good teaching and learning. Is it a fad? Is it not? But if if you can't be bothered to do it for your staff, why are we doing it for the kids?
Lindsay has joined us. Lindsay is an assistant head teacher for teaching and learning, and will therefore be able to give us a very well informed perspective on knowledge organisers and other organisers as well, and possibly even insets. So, Lindsay,
Oh,
over to
good
you.
evening. I've been quietly listening along because I wrote my CPD inset schedules for today and tomorrow. So it's really interesting to hear your thoughts because I'm the creator in my school of the plan. In terms of knowledge organisers, I'm at a secondary school and I'm a mathematician, and I do think that they are worthwhile documents, but possibly because of the nature of my subject. So in Key Stage 4, you've got a whole heap of need to know formulae for GCSE, and that lends itself really nicely to things like that. But I do think that it has to be a whole school approach. So we have a whole school approach with knowledge organisers, and I think they can be found on our website as well. So we've got parents that are really engaged and they want to support their children with their learning. And I think having things like that on the website is actually really helpful to them. And it helps them to support their children at home as well. So I'm a bit pro knowledge organizer.
I was going to say, I get the point about the formulae, etc., and having those, as a way, very important in maths. I was also going to say a point that was made earlier about particularly non-specialist teaching and how Lucy was talking about having a sort of an aide-memoire for a teacher. It can be very important. Weirdly, anybody who's sort of been following the teacher recruitment and retention process might be quite surprised by what I have to say in the next 10 seconds. We have a shortage of history teachers this year in our school, and we've got a lot of non-specialists teaching history, and there are some quite complicated topics and some quite complicated concepts which come across. So one of the things we're doing, rather than providing a knowledge organizer, so to speak, is we're providing sort of a one-page summary of a teacher's guide, if you like, of here are the lessons, here's the overarching themes, here are the things they need to know. One might call it a knowledge organizer. It's not a knowledge organizer I'd give to a student. It's very much sort of a teacher's guide of, you're teaching this is what you need to know about this in order to communicate it to students. Some people might call that a knowledge organizer. Nathan, would you call that a knowledge organizer?
I think this bleeding between stuff is really like a summary, the in-depth thing. I think of, there are sketch notes that certain people do, an account, that you can follow on Twitter, and which I really like, and they help explain things in a different way. I really like that visual style of presenting it in a different way. I just don't know, like, what is a knowledge organizer? My experience of a knowledge organizer, and this was from primary, I would say, but what Lindsay described there as this powerful statement kind of what would be included that was helpful to everyone, not necessarily just the students, but we used to have ours on the website as well, and parents could look at it, other year groups could look at it. It was, just a quick reference to help engage, help understand, and they could be used for revision of some sort, but that's not really how primary works in the same way. And I found that part of it, like, maybe it's not a knowledge, maybe it's like a summary document, maybe it's like or a map or something, I don't know, but we're all using different things and calling them the same word. Maybe that's where the problem is, this kind of slippage of what we need.
I think so long as across your school you're consistent with what the staff understand that particular school's knowledge organizer to be. So at our school we set parameters, and we said that it has to be no more than a side of A4, and we set very definite parameters so that you don't have this sudden imbalance where, you know, the history key stage 4 curriculum is whopping, and so their knowledge organisers could be huge. There's a balance. And you know, the other thing is, you know, when we had high levels of absence, they're really useful because students can use them as revision materials and access them from home.
I think the thing is that if we can't define what a knowledge organiser actually is, we can't put it into Staffroom 101. And also, the sense I've got from people who have spoken is there is no real popular sentiment for putting knowledge organisers into Staffroom 101 because they've been found to be useful for students, for teachers, etc. And we may as well leave them out because, but I think perhaps like over reliance on knowledge organiser, over reliance on PowerPoint, over reliance on anything in education is a big problem. And the question is always, if a student has memorised everything on a knowledge organiser, are they going to perform perfectly in any assessments they may have to do? No, not necessarily, because it's how they then go on to interpret that and utilise that, which determines that. Nathan, are we putting knowledge organisers into Staffroom 101?
I'm saying no, and I am persuaded by the way Lindsay's described it. Like, it is up to you. I hope that when I liked them least was when they seemed to be taking up the most amount of everyone's time, and they had they were in their initial, like you say, 2019, 2020, and they were massive things and taking up, and everyone seemed to be working on them. I didn't like them then, but they seem to have settled down into just a thing that we do, and schools have got their own way of doing it or their own way of using it. It's just explaining to everyone what's expected from this unit of work and recording it somewhere is a good thing. And I like them at the level they're at now. As long as they don't peak again and take over education, I like them where they are. Keep them.
So knowledge organisers then are staying out of Staffroom 101. I think we are agreed on that.
I want them binned for primary, so I'm going to caveat what I'm saying by saying from a primary point of view, I don't. Well, I mean, I have never used them as a primary teacher. I might get shot down in flames for this, but I just not for students. For me, great. For them, something that's going to be stuck in their.
I think then for our secondary colleagues amongst us, we're keeping knowledge organisers outside of Staffroom 101. Is it our first rejection of the night?
I think so.
Yeah, first save.
So there we go. Knowledge organisers survive for another day. It's great time for me to tell you that Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Reading and learning language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills through inclusive and relatable content. The new Pearson MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. You want to find out more? Go to go.pearson.com/MFL. What is next for Staffroom 101? I have a list. It was 9-1 grading. Basically, number grades was our next candidate. So saying you got a 9 or a 7 or a 5 or whatever it is.
Do you know what, Tom? I don't say it. Do you know why?
Because you teach in Wales.
Because I teach in Wales and we've still got letter grades.
Well, this is a problem. Wales still has letters. The IGCSE sometimes still has letters. Scotland, I apologise, I have no idea what it's like in Scotland. Northern Ireland, I'll need somebody like Andrea to come on and tell me what it's like in Northern Ireland. But yeah, there's this inconsistent approach to grading, which means that basically parents, especially parents, don't have a clue what any of it means. And the solution is bring back letters.
The problem is, Tom, is that we just reinvent the same thing. And I will give you the example from the primary world where we got rid of grades, right? in primary, there was this like getting rid of levels, life without levels. That's what it was. It was something like that, life without levels. This is back in like maybe 2014, 2015. And we got rid of them. And it used to be that you had like a level 6 was above, greater, more better. Level 5 was about where it should be. Level 4 was below. And so we got rid of them because we didn't like this. We didn't like numbers. We didn't like grading kids in that way. It was a problem. Everyone was fixated on it. Or how do you move from a 5 to a 6? Problem. So what we do is we're going to have life without levels, no levels. And what we did almost immediately was we went, do you know what? We're going to have kids who are at the expected standard, the greater depth standard, and the ones who are below the expected standard. And we're going to kind of subdivide those up as well. And we just reinvented levels. And this is what I feel has happened at secondary in England, is they went, right, we want to do something radical and different. We're going to get rid of grades, actually. We're going to do this. And they just reinvented the same thing. And that just makes it even more grating. Because what's the top number?
Nathan, 9. It is a 9, correct.
Okay, and is that equivalent to like an A?
No, it's equivalent to an A star.
Okay, so
a top A star. So grade 8 encompasses sort of the bottom of the A stars and the top of the A.
Yeah.
The 7 is sort of the rest of the A.
Yeah.
A 6 is essentially a B.
Mm-hmm.
A 5 is a strong C.
Yeah.
A 4 is a low C.
Right.
And then apparently the rest of it is fails, but they're not a failure. If you get a 1, a 2, or a 3, you're not a failure. It's a qualification.
Look, kids,
it's a level 1 qualification.
Look, if you are listening, do not let these people tell you. If you worked hard for it and that is the level you have worked for, you are not. I hate that. I work with people who get level 1s. It is not. If it is the grade that you have worked for and you have tried for and you've put in the effort for it, there is no failure. As long as it can get you to the next place you want to be, or the next step, then there is, a poor. I hate that language in education. So, but essentially, my point stands is essentially it's the same thing, Tom. There's no like magical difference to it, is there?
Well, so let's talk about the reason why the numbers were brought in. Basically, the government wanted to differentiate. The government complained about grade inflation, this idea that too many students are getting the top grades. So they wanted to introduce the 9 as a way of essentially differentiating between the creme de la creme and just the creme. And also the fact that 9 was the top number and it wasn't 1 at the top and then 9 at the bottom meant that in future, if there was more grade inflation, they could then include more grades. So they could perhaps introduce the grade 10 if they wanted to differentiate further. So the number system was brought in because of the students at the very top, whereas I feel as if it just makes everything else relatively meaningless. And we'd be, letters. Parents understand what letters mean. I still get asked by parents and at parents' evening, and even by students, "Oh, I got a grade 6. What does that mean?" Well, it's a B in old language.
Tom, I want to contrast this because there are other subjects, like BTECs and things like that, where they have less categories, right? So you can get a pass, a merit, a distinction, something like that. You can have 3 things and still have got the qualification, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure how BTEC etc. works. I know you have distinctions and merits and stars and whatever they are.
But there are less things. Why do we need to sift the children in such a way? Why is the system insistent on sifting the children in such a way that we have to? But I have to know if they are the creme de la creme. Are they the best of the best? Is it? Do we have to fine level them in such a way? Can it not be pass? Really good pass. Why do we need to know? And what is it in our system? What is it in our thinking that means we need to go, right? Yeah, actually, yeah, you met the expected standard. That's great. In primary, it is that. It's the expected standard or greater depth. You did really good. There's literally 2 levels to a pass. There is that. Why does secondary insist on then going, actually, we need 9 different levels so that we can really tell these kids apart? We really need to work out who the creme did. We really need to rank these children in order.
Well, it's the same with Ofsted and with schools as well, isn't it? You know, you have outstanding and you have good. Let's face it, if you, I mean, it seems like lots of schools are good these days, but one of my predictions is they're going to split up the good into two categories to further differentiate the schools which are strong goods and sort of less strong goods. So good going on outstanding or good going on RI. I think another category might come into play, especially if we continue to have a Conservative government for the next couple of years.
But let's look at other things. What about degrees? There's like 4 categories for a degree, right? There's like a third, a 2-2, a 2-1, and a first, right? And there's probably some other nice bits you can get on that, but I'm sure we can have
first or a high,
like you know, you can be like the person who has like an extra cap or something. I'm like there's things that happen. What about like a doctorate thing? You know, surely there's not so many levels. I don't understand why this insistence at secondary. In Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5, we insist on seeing them in so many different little boxes that we have to grade them in. You know what?
I think it has. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the numbers because I mean, at every parents' evening, I find myself translating back to the letters for the parents. But I would say, having been in many conversations today, that it has a place when you're talking about whether or not a child can move on to take your course at Key Stage 5. Because if you had, say, 3 different categories, that's quite crude and quite broad. And the jump up from, I mean, I'm talking as a mathematician here, but the jump up from GCSE to A levels is huge, and we're not prepared to let a student make that jump if we don't think that they're capable of seeing out the 2 years, because we're thinking about their well-being. So we do say, if you want to do A level maths, you need to have a 7, because we do need to know who the brighter the ones are, and that fine grading, if you like, does help us to identify that.
I was about to ask you what your grade requirement was for A-level maths, because in most
7.
cases now it's a grade 7.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you actually dig down, and Lindsay, you'll know far more about this than me. I only saw it in passing. What a grade 7 actually means in maths, in terms of grade boundaries, in terms of what a student is able to do. What they're still getting a significant part of a GCSE higher maths paper wrong.
Yes.
And to say, well, and actually, from that perspective, you got less than 7, to say, well, actually, you'll get even more than that wrong. You don't have the foundations required to actually have a good stab at A-level maths.
Yeah.
It's interesting for me as somebody who leads on politics. Obviously, it's a subject they haven't done at GCSE because you can't do a GCSE in politics. Our entry requirements are, well, we want you to have a grade 5 in history or geography, or a grade 6 in religious studies, because apparently it's easy to get a grade in RS than it is in history or geography. And we want you to have that grade 5, i.e. a strong pass, in the words of Nick Gibb, in English language, because if you have anything less than that, then you're not going to be able to cope with the writing elements of politics. History, but again, in history, we had a student who, got a grade 4 at GCSE who ended up getting an A in A-level history. The way things sort of work. One of my proudest moments this summer was a student who, got 4s and 5s on teacher-assessed grades, who ended up walking away with ABB, a place at university, at a Russell Group University, and if this remark goes away, they'll get an A-star in politics. So a lot of the time, students go through a lot of barriers and a lot of problems at GCSE, and I do sometimes feel as if there should possibly be a case-by-case basis in some cases of some, the student, you've missed out on this grade, but if you can do this, this, and this, and show us that actually you can do you can meet the demands to be A level, we can let you in. And I think from a sixth form perspective, that's where things like transition work fit in quite nicely, because you could have a student who's got a grade 7 in maths who actually, when it comes to some of the, I don't want to talk about maths because it's not my specialism, but in history, you could have a student who gets a grade 7 in history, but when it comes to the step up required for A level, actually doesn't really have a right skill set for it, and it's, you know, something that can be taught, but it's much more difficult. Anyway, I feel as if I've gone on a massive tangent. So Nathan, where on earth were we?
I just don't understand it. Do you know what I mean? And you guys talking about it there just makes me think like we have got a messy system, right? If you're saying that like to get onto A level, a 7 in this subject, but a 5 in this subject, but 6 in this subject, it sounds messy, like inconsistency, and that must be, I think, incredibly difficult for parents and for students as well to kind of get their head around what they need to achieve, and what is good and what is not. And I don't know, like as I say, I don't have the answers to how you would make this situation simpler. But if you were able to say, okay, you know, you get above this means you're ready for A level. Below this means you need some more work before you're ready for that level of work.
But also, different
Like,
places will have different entry requirements,
yeah.
and I'm not sure how common it is. But, you know, in some places to do A-level history, they might say, well, you need a grade 6. In other places, you know, and somebody might go, well, actually, in the college down the road, we only need a grade 5. So why can't you? I want to come here, so why can't you take it for grade 5? So it can cause significant issues. I mean, there's a whole other thing to say about sort of, you know, how many marks you actually have to get on an A-level paper to get a certain grade. In politics, it's very low. As Mark might be able to tell us, in English literature, it's ridiculously high. So like 95% for an A star or something. Mark, you wanted to talk?
Yeah, I was just going to. I think my issue with, I agree entirely that if you're looking at the exam results graded and the use in predicting or guiding students as to where they're going next, absolutely, I think they are essential, and we need to have that level of differentiation between them, or distinction between them. But I think in terms of my problem with the grades is earlier on in the GCSE courses or the A-level courses, that they cause either too much anxiety or complacency. So students will put themselves under a lot of pressure. Obviously, you want students to push themselves, but it can cause, like I say, anxiety in the students. Or you get those students who say, well, I've got a 5, that's all I need, so I'm not going to bother doing any work anymore. So my issue with the grades is lower down. Right? That's where I think that simplified version would be better in terms of assessing the students as they build up to their exams.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Yeah, I mean, I've heard from a lot of students who've gone, well, I need to get my 4 in English language, in maths, and in science, and then something else, and I don't care about your subject, so I'm not going to bother, and I don't care if I get a 1.
Yeah.
And then
And how many times as well
push
do
on,
you give?
getting 2s and 3s and everything, and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I shouldn't be. You know, I under no circumstances should I be like, I told you so, because this is your future that you've screwed up here.
And
But
how many times
I
as
did
well
tell
do you give back an assessment, and all you get is a classroom full of students saying, "What did you get? What did you get? What did you get?" And they're not looking at the feedback. They're not looking at how they can improve or how they can build up, improve their score. All they care about is what they've got, and that's it. So I think if we take that away, at that stage at least, then that would potentially be more beneficial to them, focusing on the skills that they need to go up a level. And you can give them a kind of a rough ballpark figure of what it is they need, and then later on, perhaps as they approach the exams, you can give them a more of a concrete answer. I don't know. This is I was discussing this today, funnily enough, in the inset, and we were talking about the pros and cons of it. So
also, grades are, you know, actually quite difficult to predict, certainly for individual students. At a cohort level, prediction should be okay. But I've requested some of the scripts back from this summer, and the variation in marking, you know, not just really harsh, but also very generous, it's been quite extreme. And I did predict this. I remember sitting on the weekly review and offending a few people back in June when I said, look, the quality of marking this year across a number of subjects is going to be incredibly poor. It's not the examiner's fault. It's because there's a lack of QA from higher up, and because the examiners aren't paid anywhere near enough to do the marking and are therefore not going to take the time and attention that they ought to. And it's not their fault. And we've seen that, I think, in a lot of the marking. And, you know, it averages out at cohort levels. You know, some will be marked more generously, some will be marked more harshly. But it's not always about cohorts, it's about individuals, and it's about individual stories. And the fact that, I've had one student who's missed out on a grade A because of some really shoddy marking on one of the papers, and they probably missed out on 11 or 12 marks, because the marking was very poor. It really rankles. But getting back to sort of where we were, because the thing that was going to go into Staffroom 101 or was being proposed was 9-1 grading. So we're not saying get rid of grades entirely, we're saying go back to letters. And the rationale behind the 9-1 was to differentiate at the top end between your very top students and your top students. But it just doesn't make sense for a lot of people. So the question is, and I suppose this is where we do thumbs up and thumbs down. Thumbs up if you would like to replace 9-1 grading with back to the letters, the A star, A, etc. Put your thumb down if you'd like to keep the 9-1 grading. I'm going to do a quick scan of the room. I shan't cold call anyone. The overwhelming consensus seems to be go back to letters. Are you listening, DFE? You know what to do. So 9-1 grading, Nathan, is in Staffroom 101.
Good.
Now, update on Gillian Keegan. Nicola Murray is currently trending on Twitter.
Who is she?
For those of you who aren't aware of who Nicola Murray is, she, of course, was the very hapless cabinet minister / leader of the opposition from the thick of it, starring Malcolm Tucker, Peter Capaldi. Known for many media gaffes. Nicola Murray's currently trending. Gillian Keegan just seems to be digging herself into a much bigger hole with every hour that passes. We've got one more thing for Staffroom 101, Nathan. What do we reckon? We are running out of time.
No, do one more, but we'll do it quick.
We'll do a speed round.
Yeah, speed round. Make
speed round.
Make it an angry one.
Right,
small.
Tom, the way you've got to do this is you've got a minute to pitch it and then vote.
So on my list, we have, as the last thing for Staffroom 101, absolutist approaches to behaviour, which is a problem because that is not something we can do quickly. We need a good half hour to talk about that. But what I'm saying are the people who go restorative, that's it, or sanctions, that's it. Doesn't matter about relationships. Make sure you just got the systems in place. I think these people are far rarer than some people on Edu Twitter would give credit to. I see a lot of people calling people like Tom Bennett, for example, zero tolerance. He's not zero tolerance, actually. If you've read some of his books, you recognise he's got a far more nuanced approach to behaviour than many people give him credit for. And at the same time, you've got people like Paul Dix, people sort of write them off as being, all la-di-da, etc. But actually, they do actually advocate a far more balanced approach. But there are some people who, take this sort of absolutist approach to behaviour. I mean, it'd be very interesting to hear. We've got a few people in the space tonight, whether, in your inset day that you've had this year or in the last few months, somebody stood in front of you as a staff body and mentioned the words trauma-informed practice, because that seems to be the going thing at the moment. And a lot of people, are talking about trauma-informed practice. But I had this conversation the other day. A lot of people are sort of putting in other things and calling it trauma-informed practice, whereas actually they don't necessarily have the required domain knowledge of what actually, adverse childhood experiences, trauma-informed practice are, etc. Nathan, I know you work in, AP, and you'll be working with students who will be bringing traumatic experiences.
But this is why, it's trauma informed and it's research informed. And I feel I can be both, and they sometimes get positioned. But the reason I think some people position them this way is because it's easier to kind of stereotype and hold up a kind of absolutist thing for ridicule. Whereas I don't think anyone is like that, because humans aren't like that. I am like, I often joke that I am on the, like, I'm a hippie at heart, aren't I? I'm out on my paddleboard surfing, and but I do like all of this stuff, rules, expectations, all of these things are there as well. And I would be with you on this. I'm yet to meet someone who is as maybe the word is extreme, is as absolute. And I was trying to think they're like absolutism, absolutely something, and maybe like someone can come up with a phrase around that. But I don't think they exist. I think they are a figment of the opposition in the argument's imagination, whichever side you're on. No one is saying that. No one is saying don't let a child wet themselves in class, and no one is saying forgive a child for everything they do. I think they're a figment of someone's imagination.
My view on behaviour is simple. Whatever your system is, whatever your approach is, if it doesn't support your ECT1 on a last thing on a Friday, and if it doesn't support your supply teachers coming in on their first day at your school, then it doesn't work as a system. You need a system that ensures that the teachers and the staff and the supply who need it the most can actually teach their classes. And if your system doesn't work for those people, it's not a system that works. And that's my view. And that's why I don't think absolutist approaches work. But also, this is why I don't like people who say, well, behaviour is about relationships. Because if you are external supply and you turn up, you don't have a relationship with any of those children, you expect it to teach them. So, a system based on relationships alone cannot work. But then again, sort of your zero tolerance. I'm not sure if it's one of those things that it's like, well, yeah, it's not zero tolerance, because actually there is tolerance, and there will always be exceptions made for good reasons where required, because of additional needs or because of additional things that on a student by student basis. But yeah, as a system, if your system doesn't support those who need it the most, then it doesn't work. So what are we saying? Quick fire absolutist approaches to behaviour? What we're going for it?
Bin 'em.
Thumbs down.
Wait, I've forgotten which way we're doing this. Is thumbs down bin?
It seems as if they are going into Staffroom 101.
Yeah, I think bin. I think the general consensus is bin there.
So that is the end of tonight's Staffroom 101. We've had a very productive hour and a half, and it's been a real pleasure to have had you join either as live listeners or listening back on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course on our website ttradio.org/listen back. We do need to wrap up now because Richie Slack is on Podbean, so make sure you head on over to our website, listen live, or the Podbean app, and listen to Richie Slack talking about what's he talking about? I think something like online education. I think, is it online education or sort of technology? I think it's something like that.
I will check for you, Tom, but I'll probably not be back in time, I'm afraid.
But it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Nathan.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
And it's goodbye from Lucy. See you next time.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.